Get ready to be jolted out of the ordinary and into a world where conversations are charged with intensity and facts. The Lightning Strike Talk Radio with your host, Mohammed Faheem, broadcasting live from the heart of the city on Chicago's Progressive Talk Radio, WCPT 820 AM. Welcome to a radio show that charges through the airwaves with an electricity like no other. Here's your host, Mohammed Faheem.
Good morning, folks, and welcome to the Lightning Strike. Another beautiful day in Chicago. Dr. Sheila White was telling me that it's going to be snowing by the end of the day today. Okay, so you never know. Okay, I've got Dr. White with me this morning, read Bible, and Brendan Vaughn has joined our conversation. We will have our Person of the Week that we actually wanted to change the format today a little bit, but we'll bring the Person of the Week in after my rant. Now, my rant today is going to be what the heck is happening with our friend Donald Trump. Okay, this week, Donald Trump stood before the American people on April 1st. Yeah, what a date. And declared that the war with Iran is nearing completion, in quotes, right? He spoke of decisive victories, crippled enemies, and a mission almost accomplished. But when you strip away the rhetoric and look at the facts, folks, a very different picture emerges. I think the highlight reel that they are showing Donald Trump every day is kind of screwed up over there, right? They're not showing him the complete truth. So let's start with what the president is claiming. He says Iran's military has been devastated. By the way, folks, it is pronounced as Iran, not Iran. Okay, it's like starts with it's written with an I, but the correct pronunciation is Iran, not Iran. Okay, so he says that Iran's military has been devastated. They don't have a military anymore. He says their missile programs have been crippled. No more missiles, okay? He says America is on the cusp of ending the threat once and for all. Now that is the narrative. Now here is the reality. The war is not winding down, folks. It is escalating. More than a month into the conflict, Iran continues to launch retaliatory strikes and even downed a U.S. fighter jet, along with some other airplanes, I'm told, right? A clear sign that its military capabilities remain intact. They have not been decimated. They remain intact. The Strait of Hormuz, one of the most crucial corridors in the world, is still disrupted, driving global instability and rising energy prices. Have you guys been to the gas station recently? I mean, it's crazy no matter which gas station you go to. And despite claims of success, there is still no clear end game, no defined path to victory, no time for peace. There's no timeline, right? Now let's talk about the deeper contradiction over here. The president says that the war is almost over, nearly over. At the same time, he's threatening further escalation, talking about attacking more infrastructure, requesting unprecedented military spending. I mean, just think about it. This guy is openly threatening war crimes, for lack of a better word. So once the administration is over, someone is going to be held accountable. And what he does is very good at that. He throws someone else under the bus. So when you threaten further escalation, when you threaten about bombing people back to the Stone Age, that is not the language of a war that is ending. That's the language of a war that is expanding. And then there's the strategic reality. Even after weeks of bombardment now, Iran's leadership remains in place. Its regional influence persists, and its alliances are shifting, not collapsing. In fact, analysts now point out that the conflict may be strengthening hardline elements within Iran rather than weakening them. So what exactly has been achieved? Let's be honest about the cost. Thousands of lives lost, I will say most of them innocent lives. Remember those little school children, the little girls that we started off killing, 160, 180 something? Global markets are shaken. Our alliances have been strained. Energy prices are surging. Right when we are at the planting season, fertilizer prices are going to go up also. And at home, Americans are being told, oh, yeah, no, everything is under control. But here's the most dangerous part, folks. When leadership begins declaring victory before the facts support it, something shifts. Accountability fades, questions become inconvenient, reality becomes negotiable. And that is when policy stops being grounded in truth and starts being driven by narrative. I want to be clear, this is not about politics. This is about credibility. Because in war, facts matter, clarity matters, honesty matters. If the American people are being told that the war is nearly over while escalation continues, if success is being declared while uncertainty grows, then the question is not just what is happening overseas. The question is, what are we being told and why? This is the lightning strike. We just don't listen to speeches, folks. We measure them against reality, and the reality is coming up short. 11 minutes past the hour. We'll be taking a quick break and be on the other side of the break with more conversations. And Dr. Sheila White is going to bring in our person of the week to meet with you. If you have any questions, any concerns, anything that you want to share with us, feel free to call in. It's going to be a very interactive show today with our listeners. The number to call in is 773-763-9278. We'll be right back. Okay, so let's go back to Dr. Sheila White. Sheila, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chicago. Happy Easter, everyone around the country, in America as well. Today, our person of the week is dedicated to restoration and hope. While sex trafficking involves unimaginable trauma, it does not define the future for the survivors. I'm very honored today to have with us as our guest for the person of the week, Dr. Cassandra May, and she's a leading expert in trauma, informed care, and victim advocacy, especially with what's going on in the news today with Epstein files, sex trafficking. This is something that's not going away. It's something that's happening in our backyard, not just in third world countries. So today we'll be discussing the journey from rescue to recovery and how communities can support those rebuilding their lives. Dr. Cassandra is the founder of Reclaim 13, an organization that's based here in Illinois, and they're helping to rescue people and rehabilitate sex trafficking victims, people that have been exploited. Welcome, Dr. Cassandra, to the lightning strike. This is a lightning strike around the world on today.
Hey,
Welcome.
Sheila, before you
Yes.
go with Dr. Cassandra, Mike just texted me over here saying my glasses are crooked. Mike, I sat on the darn glasses this morning. Okay. And these are cheap dollar store glasses, readers, Mike. So my
We'll try to make you
apologies.
look good, brother. We'll try to
Okay.
make you look good.
My apologies to the viewers today, not just the listeners. Okay, and
Yeah.
I will go ahead and so Dr. Cassandra's last name is Ma. She just is
Yes.
telling us, not May. So sorry
That's all right.
about our screw up over here, Dr. Ma, this morning. But welcome to the Lightning Strike, Sheila. She's all yours.
Okay. Well, what are some of the red flags to identify when someone is being trafficked, Dr. Cassandra? Because some people don't realize when they're on an airplane or when they're seeing maybe a young person that is walking with an adult, maybe male, could be female. What are some of the flags that people can identify?
We just had something recently where one of our kids was talking about the fact that she was on a train and she had blood. She had no shoes on. She was being
Mm.
accompanied by a male. And so I think there's just basically, if you have a sense that there's something wrong with this relationship, usually it tends to be an older male and a younger girl. But it could be any scenario where a person is being controlled by another person and you just feel something is wrong, just to reach out to that person and ask
You
if they
know,
need anything.
how do you build rapport when a survivor may be afraid to talk or afraid to reach out? How do you build rapport with them?
We think of this as a long game. So you have to, so we're building relationships. We are all a part of building relationships, positive relationships, and giving people hope. And so it may not be necessarily the first encounter that they will reach out for help because they have to come to trust you, but we can all do our part in building those positive relationships with people.
You know, this is something that a lot of people think it's in a third world country, as I was saying, but this is right in our backyard, suburban America, so to speak. How widespread would you say that this is for people that are not into this conversation? Help them to understand how big of a problem, not just since the Epstein files and all of that has come out, but help people to understand how big of a problem this is around the world.
Yeah. Said to be the second fastest growing crime, second to drug trafficking, the trafficking of human beings. And so, if you think about it, in this country, it's really hard to come up with accurate statistics because it's such a hidden problem. But the most vulnerable children in our world are children who are running away from home, or in this side of the world,
Mhm.
are children running away from home. And so, I think if you could kind of extrapolate from that, these children are vulnerable to the wrong people picking them up and harming them. We have a lot of vulnerable children in our country.
You know, let's talk a little bit about the age that this happens most often. I mean, I know babies are trafficked
Mhm.
as well, but what is the general age, or is there a general age that this happens to? And let's talk about the males as well as the females that this could happen to.
Mhm.
Right. So we are called Reclaim 13, and the 13 connotes is that number that children are the most vulnerable to exploitation. And our internal statistics show that most of our children were actually trafficked 13 or younger. So this is a problem that impacts all of our children, and as you said, boys as well. Boys are almost more vulnerable because there's so many more reasons why boys might not come forward and tell about the problems about people who are kind of doing bad things initially, that become compounds and becomes worse. And so it's a problem that impacts all of our children. And with the onset of the internet and social media, we all are reading stories about children being exploited, being connected with, groomed, what we call groomed on the internet.
You know, it's so important to talk about this subject today because it's something that's in our news quite often. And we know what's happening in Washington with that conversation. But what's the best way to help a survivor safely leave that situation? Because you may identify it and you don't know how to help them to safely be able to get out of that situation.
The key, and this is something we can all do, is building healthy relationships with children,
Mm,
especially vulnerable children, because children can't leave these unhealthy and abusive and exploitive relationships unless they have somebody else to go to. So many of our
mhm.
kids are really very much children who are alone in this world or feel that they're alone in this world. And so we can all do our part to reach out to these kids.
You know, we did some work on this a little bit a few years ago, and there are airlines that are really helping to identify people that are on planes that
Yeah.
are being sex trafficked. And there's so many resources out there to help. If you suspect that a person is a victim, what is a resource that a person can call if they see a person on an airplane or a train or just in a restaurant? What are some resources that they can get involved in to try to help that individual?
So there is a national hotline, but I think more immediately, if you suspect somebody's being harmed, certainly on an airplane or a train
Yeah.
or anywhere, to go to the local officials, the local law enforcement, to be able to help let them know what's going on. We had the situation where we were in at the Empire State Building. We were visiting in New York
Mhm.
City, and a girl just happened to be by herself up there crying. And so again, I don't know what the scenario was for this child, but we certainly went to the local security guard to let him know that something was going on so that he could be on the lookout for the child.
It's so important the work that you do, Dr. Cassandra, and I just, kind of salute you in that. Let's talk a little bit in our next few minutes about Reclaim 13. You all have fundraisers. You're doing a lot for rehabilitation, advocacy, helping babies as well as, children all the way up to age 25. So talk a few minutes about the programs that you have that you are helping individuals with this sexual exploitation and trafficking, and how can people support your organization?
We have three different components of programming. One is our residential programs, children who
Okay.
are escaping trafficking between the ages of 10 and 25. We have residential specialized therapeutic programming for. We also have community programs that serve children, as you said, as young as one, little ones who are identified as sexual abuse victims, right in hospitals, all the way up to any age. So any age adult, we serve children and adults in our community programs. And then we also have a therapy clinic that's specialized to
Yeah.
work with our population.
How can a person donate to your organization? That's very important, the work that you're doing. And there are people that want to help, and that may be the only thing that they can do to support.
Yeah, thank you for asking it. For donating or for getting involved with us or just more information, it's www.reclaim13.org, RECLAIM13.org.
Mohammed, this is something that is so important. We know what's happening in our news with, the victims that have been the Epstein victims, so to speak. And I think organizations like this that have boots on the ground, that are making a difference, they're right here in Illinois, and they have their hands reached out to help these young victims to be able to regain their lives, rebuild their lives, rehabilitate their lives, and the journey from to go to recovery. So it's so important. And I just want to thank you, Dr. Cassandra, for being our special guest today on this Easter day, because it's a resurrection day and you are helping to resurrect lives for individuals, boys, girls, babies, as well as going all the way up to age 25. So when is your next gala? I want to bring that up because I know that's a big event that you guys have. And we're going to turn it back over to Mohammed.
Thank you for asking. It's October 16th.
Thank you.
October
Thank you,
16th.
Sheila. So, do any one of our other hosts over here, have you guys got any questions for Dr. Ma? We'll start with Mike. Mike, you got anything that you want to ask Dr. Ma?
No, I really appreciate it. Welcome to the show. It's an awareness that has to be spread out there. Whether you're retired from American Airlines, I know my wife got involved in that as a manager with American and was involved in similar programs that you're talking about, and they're so necessary since there's so much trafficking going on, through the airports, right? So thank you so much for your program.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Mike. And folks, if you want to call in, we do have a little bit time today because you're not doing the usual political stuff this morning, okay? And the number to call in is 773-763-9278 or WCPT. You can also text us at that number. And let me see if Reed has any questions. Reed, you got anything for Dr. Ma?
Dr. Ma, thanks for being here this morning. I was in law enforcement for quite a few years, and when I had to deal with human smuggling matters, the typical profile were young women from Eastern Europe who were coming over to the United States for economic opportunities and being lied to about them being here, maybe being a model or an au pair. And then when they got here, they found it was a totally different circumstance. That is the profile I'm most accustomed to. What is the profile that you've encountered the most in your time?
Yeah, I think because we work with children and I'm aware of that as well. So thank you for the work that you did in law enforcement. The children because we work with children, I think the children that we work with have histories of running away. They have histories of prior abuse at their homes, which is the reason they're running away in the first place. And then they're picked up by the wrong people, unfortunately, many of them, and then it turns into exploitation or abuse. And so I think, we work with very, very young children, as young as, as Dr. Sheila said, as young as 10 in our home. And so these are kids who have had long histories, even prior to that young, tender age of 10, of abuse and maltreatment by other adults.
Okay,
Kind of
I
the
have a question.
If-
I have a question as well. Let's talk a little bit about people that are the victims. Sometimes they're deprived of food, of sleep, of
yeah.
medical care. How do you work with them when they've gone through this trauma, physically and mentally and emotionally? How do you kind of bridge them back to be able to trust again? Because sometimes it's family members that have trafficked this person. It's a sad situation. They can't go back to that family. So how do you regain that trust again?
Yeah. So I
Mhm.
keep referencing this, and I want to help us kind of sort of expand the conversation. One organization can't do all of it, but I think so we
Mhm.
talked about a concept of forever community, and forever community includes our law enforcement partners, includes our hospitals, includes child advocates, includes anybody
Mhm.
who's involved with our kids, to be able to form a healthy and loving community around these children so that they can see that there are other adults than the adults that they've known. One of the biggest problems beyond the sort of actual obvious problems of the trauma of trafficking is the fact that these kids have come to believe that the adults in our world are bad people and are not trustworthy. And so changing that narrative for our children, the beautiful thing is children are so resilient. Children are beautifully, adaptive, but being able to give them that message, I think, is something that we all have a sacred responsibility as adults in our world to be able to communicate to children.
I think we have a caller, Mohammed, on the
Yep.
line that
And
wants to.
I the caller wants to talk about Brad Snyder, and I just want to bring you in about a couple of minutes. So if you could please stay on the line, we'd love to talk about Brad Snyder. Okay, Brendan, you got any questions for Dr. Ma?
I don't have any questions. I just want to say thank you very much for what you do. It's very important work.
Yeah, because this is a very important conversation that we are having this morning, Sheila, and thank you so much for bringing Dr. Ma to our attention. Dr. Ma, have you worked with the other organizations like NAMI and others and AMI?
Mhm. Yeah, we work with all those organizations are part of that forever community that I mentioned.
Okay, and which counties do you work in?
So we work in the whole state, and we've received kids from other states as well because we have a unique home that goes to, works with children that young. So our kids have been trafficked in over 26 states, I believe, to date.
Okay, because I live in Will County, and in Will County,
Mm,
we
yeah,
passed a referendum about a year and a half back to have a mental health board.
yeah.
And then the Republicans came up and they were refusing to allow funding for that, okay, in the county board meetings.
Mm.
So there was quite a bit of a fight for that. My daughter is actually on that board. She is a clinical psychotherapist.
Oh.
So she was appointed to the board by the Will County executive, and I get the inside scoop on what is happening with their funding. Okay.
I think we just actually received a grant from the Will County Mental Health Board. So thank you
Yep.
for your
So
daughter.
thank you so much for joining us. And folks, that's Dr. Cassandra Ma. And let's go to our callers today and let's see who we have on the line. Good morning.
How y'all doing?
I'm doing good. Who's this?
Morning, everyone. It's
Good morning.
Alexandria calling in from up in Lake County, northeast corner of Illinois.
Okay. Good morning. How are you?
Doing pretty good overall. I have to say, though, rather disappointed in my congressman. I've been emailing him, calling him. He's literally unreachable. I know you all have talked about trying to get him on the show before, and I just kind of wanted to expand on that point. He's very unresponsive. I remember, if anybody else in the audience recalls, back when there were multiple humanitarian aid flotillas being sent to Gaza, like I emailed him, hey, why haven't you joined your colleagues to speak up about this? And the email I got told him his whole resume about the Israel-Palestine issue, and I just emailed again, like, hey, that isn't what I asked. I asked why you didn't join your colleagues. I didn't ask for your stance on the issue, because I know your stance on the issue.
Okay.
And he's also recently, as folks have seen, called Hassan like anti-Semitic and stuff like that. And I just wanted clarification. I'm like, can you cite a specific quote? Can you explain to me how that is anti-Semitic? I would genuinely love to know.
Well,
And that was multiple
Dr.
weeks ago.
I want to bring in Dr. Ma into the conversation for a couple of minutes. If you can stay with us before you go for Easter services.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you reached out to the state representatives and political leaders who has been responsive to you so far, especially our local Congress people? Has anyone been responsive, or has anyone said, no, we don't care about this? So, Dr. Ma,
She's on mute.
yep,
Dr. Ma, you're on mute.
yeah, you're muted.
Oh, I'm so
Okay.
sorry. I wasn't really sorry about that.
So, yeah, because see, what Alexandra is bringing out also is how our representatives are really not representing the people. They are more representative of the people that fund their elections. So, which political leaders, and I don't want to put you on a spot over here. So, if you don't want to answer, please say that, no, I don't want to piss off anyone in Congress. But who has been responsive with you? I mean, who has been working with you on this? I'll give you a couple of
So
names. Okay, Brad Schneider, like what our caller is talking about. And let's say who is in the 10th district over here? Brad Schneider is in the 10th district. Sean Casten is in the 6th district. Raja Krishnamurthy was in the 8th district. I mean, we have all of these people who are supposed to represent our interests. Who has worked with you on this?
So it's a really good question. We have the benefit of because human trafficking is it's fairly hard to, it's a fairly easy bipartisan issue. I think we've had support from both sides. We have in fact this is so different from some of the conversations. So the Illinois state actually there's a grading system for states across the board, and because of some new legislation that was passed really by both sides. SB 2323 is the most notable one. It advocated for statewide coordination of care for our victims. And so we've actually moved, believe it or not, from an F to an A on our report card because of this latest legislation. So we have the benefit of both sides of support in this area.
Well, thank you so much for answering that. And if you have got better things to do, then stick with us on Sunday morning. Please.
It's been an honor. Thank you.
Go ahead. Thank you so much for joining us. And we got Dr. Khan calling in on the line. If you could just bring him into the conversation. And Dr. Ma, you can leave if you want to, or you can stay with us if you want to. Okay.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. Okay. So we got Dr. Khan calling in. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Fine. Thank you, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good. So what is top of mind for you in Detroit? I know that you're calling in from Detroit. What's top of mind for you? What do you want to talk about today?
My concern is regarding the issue of separation of church and state, particularly in reference to Mr. Hexet calling this war a war for Jesus. It is bothersome to a person who migrated here some more than 50 years ago, and this never happened before. This is very concerning to a citizen who believes in the Constitution and its application in day-to-day life. And this is a change. I just want to address you to address this issue so that we can get this message conveyed to the right people.
So you're talking about Secretary Hogwood. I call him, not even Hexet. Remember, Sheila? This guy first off goes in and rebrands the Department of Defense as the Department of War. And then he brings in all these people and says that, hey, you got to be in perfect shape. And look at your commander-in-chief, man. Talk about being in shape. But the question that you have, Dr. Khan, is a very important question. And I would like Reed to talk about this and handle this question for you. Reed joins us from Henderson, Nevada every Sunday. And he is an attorney as well as a former special supervisory agent for the Department of Homeland Security. And Reed, go ahead, please.
Dr. Khan, thank you for calling in, and I share your concern. This comes within the context of the rise of Christian nationalism in this country. And it seems as if we have, I happen to be a Christian myself, so I feel I can talk about this. I don't believe that my faith should be a national faith. We don't have a national religion. We're supposed to have a secular government. And it's clear in our Constitution it's supposed to be secular. And if for no other reason than that, okay, what if one day Christianity isn't the dominant religion in the country, but say it's Hinduism or Zoroastrianism, and now I'm going to be treated as a marginalized person. Everybody's not going to get a turn in the seat here. It's oppressive, it's disrespectful, the reason why we have a secular government is because we want all religions to be able to practice freely and without fear of being discriminated against or precluded from public office and that sort of thing. But right now, it seems that there's been this backlash to any other faith from Christians who consider themselves to be nationalists, and that Christianity is the only faith that the world's allowed to practice. And this type of intolerance, I don't think, is in keeping even with Christian conventional doctrine.
Reed, I want to jump in a little bit over here. And when you use the word Christian, you're using it pretty generically, right? I mean,
yes.
Because to me, a good Christian would not be doing what Pete Hexet and Stephen Miller and all of the gang of jokers over there in the White House are doing, right?
They certainly wouldn't, no. Yeah. And we share tenets in common with all the great faiths in the world. One is thou shalt not kill, and one should also be forgiving of other people. And it disturbs me when I see Franklin Graham, the son of Billy Graham, at a prayer breakfast earlier this week in the White House, talking about Trump being comparable to Christ and just promoting warfare. I was shocked to see it. This is not Christianity that I'm used to, and but Franklin Graham considers himself to be a Christian, but he's more of a Christian nationalist, which means that only Christianity counts and is to be respected. All the other great faiths of the world don't matter, and that to me is that's going down the road towards religious oppression to me.
Yep, and the Pope came up very strong on this also. The Pope said, "Hey, this is not what Christians are supposed to be doing, the war that is going on." So have we answered your question so far, Dr. Khan, or is there anything that you want to add to the conversation?
No, the questions have been answered, and I think they have been very well articulated. And I hope that these messages are conveyed to the people who are making these statements in public. And there are marginalized people in terms of knowledge and understanding who get impressed by this rhetoric, and they begin to believe that, yes, this is, for example, this war that's going on now is a war for Jesus. And this is going to have a long-term impact on the welfare of those who do not consider this as legitimate war to begin with. And secondly, a war that has anything to do with Christianity or Islam.
Well, one of the things that I was noticing on on March 28th, we had the No Kings rallies all over the country, right? And
some 8 million people joined.
Yep, and I was there in our local rally that I went to, and believe it or not, we had pastors against the war in the rally with huge signs saying "Pastors against the war." So, Reed, again to refer back to the word Christians and Christianity, we have had the discussion in the past also. Why do people who call themselves Christian, especially we're talking about the right wingers that we have, right? Yeah. Have they not studied the words of Christ?
Quite frankly, Mohammed, I can't tell, because especially the New Testament, there there are all kinds of commandments that were in the Old Testament, but when Jesus came on the scene and we made the New Testament, he had an 11th commandment to love one another. I mean, that wasn't a suggestion, that was a commandment. And he also preached tolerance. There's all kinds of stories throughout the New Testament about Christ's advocation for tolerance for one another. And this, I don't think that these so-called Christians are reading the same scriptures that I'm reading. And I think that they're more nationalists than they are Christians. You know, Christianity has been perverted throughout the centuries to justify things like slavery. So they pick and choose certain excerpts and then they misinterpret them or pervert the interpretations. And that's not just typical of Christianity. Other great faiths, the same things have happened in Islam, in Hinduism, that sort of thing. But these are radicals. These are fringe radicals. These aren't the mainstreams of Christian faith or any of the other faiths.
Well, let's not forget also that our president did not put his hand on the Bible when he took the oath this time, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes for a photo op and he holds the Bible upside down in the left hand for pictures. So when we have a president who does not know what the Bible is, and a president who's been indicted for 34 felonies, how many of them do you think are actually the commandments that he broke, from the 10 commandments to the 11th commandment that you're referring to, Reed?
Exactly, Mohammed. And Franklin Graham knew that as he's standing there at the podium next to him, praising this man as being the most Christian of presidents, kind of thing. I thought, this guy has gone bonkers.
Okay. So, folks, you're tuned in to The Lightning Strike. I'm your host, Mohammed Faheem. We come every Sunday morning from 8 to 10 on WCPT, Chicago's progressive talk radio station, which is the largest progressive talk radio station in the country. And you're listening to this conversation all over the world on the website of the station, on the internet, on heartlandsignal.com. And we will be posting this conversation on our website, tlsradio.com, afterwards, and on our YouTube channel also, so you can go check it out. So, Dr. Khan, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for calling. Please don't be a stranger. If you have anything on your mind, feel free to call in. Any Sunday, we do take calls, and this segment is sponsored by Ray Hanania of hanania.com, and we call it What's on Your Mind? So we can have the conversations with our listeners. And right now we have hundreds and thousands of people tuning in and listening every Sunday morning to the show. And thank you for joining us. And again, if anyone wants to join the conversation today, the number to call in is 773-763-9278 or 773-763-WCPT. You can also text us at that number. And after the show, if you want to call in and leave a message for us, I'll give you another number. It's 312-TLS for the Lightning Strike, 312-TLS-8281. And you can always leave us a message at that. It's a Google number, and we'll be happy to play messages back on the air with us. Let's go back to the conversation. And Reed, I want to come back to what you wanted to talk about today. And I know that you have a lot on your mind. And let's unpack what you have. And then in the second hour, Congresswoman Marie Newman will be joining us. Maaria Mozaffar should be joining us. And we can continue the conversations that we have every Sunday morning, which are so important for us as Americans. Go ahead, Reed.
Well, thank you, Mohammed. First of all, I want to say to the whole team and to our listening audience, a happy Easter to our Christian listeners, and happy Passover to our Jewish listeners. And before I go on, I want to point out that last weekend's No Kings rally, I understand the last tallies are that it was close to 9 million people that showed up. So that's almost 2 million more than what showed up in October. The movement is growing. And right here in the Las Vegas, Henderson area, I happened to run into a woman I want to give a shout out to, Miss Judy Olson of Lombard, Illinois. She was a grandmother, I believe, here visiting her grandkids, and I ran into her in one of the protests here in Henderson. So I told her that I'd give you a shout out because I think she's listening to us this morning. So hello there, Judy, and thank you. It was a pleasure meeting you. But what I have in mind today is I've got isms on my mind. Isms, racism, classism. Because these isms have combined into a tremendous wealth gap that is now insidiously and gradually destroying American society. But we can do something about it. We can stop it. You know, America is experiencing a greater wealth gap or concentration of wealth and income in the hands of a small percentage of our population that is greater than even the periods known as the Gilded Age or the Roaring Twenties. It's really, there's been a massive transfer of wealth from the middle class to the top 1% to 10% of the households since 1980. And this is resulting in the decline of our middle class. The wealth gap has its historic roots in it has its historic roots in a backlash from wealthy whites to the progressive policies that were proposed during Reconstruction. This backlash has enabled oligarchs both then and now to avoid paying their fair share of taxes that could fund social welfare programs that might benefit members of the working classes of all races whose labor was exploited to produce that tremendous wealth. Mm-hmm. So I want to point out two concrete historic examples of both racism and classism and how they've merged into this great wealth gap that frankly is killing equitable citizenship for our entire society. One is the either no or flat income tax systems that we find in a lot of states. The other one is the Medicare gap. Both of these regressive measures perpetuate inequality of citizenship for working class Americans, but they were primarily intended to relegate African Americans to second-class status to deny equal opportunities. During the Reconstruction period that followed our Civil War, newly emancipated African Americans were primary advocates for establishment of a public school system, public education, as a means to achieve equality, independence, and integration into American society. And there were many low-income working-class whites who also understood the benefits to be derived from a public education system being put into existence. However, white supremacists and the oligarchy of that time, the plantation owners, the industrialists, they were resistant to payment of any taxes that might yield benefits to African Americans or other marginalized groups such as poor whites. So they especially did not relish the idea of providing an education to Black children. There was a backlash to any progressive forms of taxation that would force the wealthy to contribute to the general welfare that in proportion to the material wealth that they derive from the socioeconomic systems of the day. And that seems to be continuing into our day. This backlash took the form of state tax systems that either did not provide for personal income taxation at all, or only flat rates, enabling the rich to pay the same percentage of their personal income in taxes as do the poor. Now, according to the Institute for Taxation and Economic Policy, there are 44 states, including Illinois, that still have regressive systems of a flat income tax rate. And they use sales taxes, property taxes, excise taxes, and surtaxes that exacerbate the inequitable taxation through institutionalized racism and or classism. Sadly, there in Illinois, you recently rejected a state constitutional amendment that would have allowed for a progressive marginal income tax that would have shifted wealth from the oligarchs to the working class there. This wealth gap between marginalized people and the rich whites that enjoy a disproportionate share of our wealth could have been substantially narrowed, at least in Illinois. Most Illinois households would have been paying less state income taxes. So there's one example of our tax system that's institutionalized racism and classism. A second one, I'll be more brief on this one, is the Medicare system. You know, there's a meta gap of 20%. Americans who are 65 years of age or older enjoy a federal health insurance program that covers most costs for approved healthcare services and supplies at lower costs than what would be the case in private insurance plans. It covers 80%. However, there's that other 20% of costs referred to as the gap that must be paid out of the insured's own resources. Most people don't realize why this 20% gap exists. And the reason it exists is because of institutionalized racism. Again, when Medicare was created in 1965, Republicans and Southern Democrats wanted to devise a means by which to minimize use of the program by marginalized people, especially racial minorities. So they chose to do it by integrating a requirement that 20% co-pays must be paid for these medical costs out of the pockets of individuals. The idea was that a requirement to pay Americans, a requirement rather, to pay 20% of potentially unlimited amounts of medical expenses would deter Black Americans and other people of color from using the program at all. Republicans and Dixiecrats believed that this tactic would appeal to white supremacists and deter all working class people from heavy dependence on Medicare due to their comparatively low incomes. So again, here's a case of both racism and classism combining to create and exploit a wealth gap that works to the detriment of most Americans to this day. And I could point other examples out, but suffice it to say, these nefarious proclivities that we're still suffering from in this country could be neutralized with progressive taxation, including a wealth tax, to make the wealthy pay their fair share, because they are certainly raking in the wealth from the rest of us.
Okay. So, Reed, thank you for that lesson in civics for us. So we had 9 million people come out to protest for no kings. Why don't I see this kind of, how do I say, this kind of coming out when it is time to go vote to elect someone?
Exactly. That is the question of the century. We are the oldest democracy in the world right now, and yet we have people who don't seem to appreciate it and exercise it by doing their civic duty, basic civic duty of voting. And I guess it's because a lot of them don't even believe in democracy anymore. We hear these, especially now in the Trump era, so many people talking about how they want an authoritarian who will get things done, that autocrats are more efficient and they'll get stuff done. But I have never seen an autocracy that eventually doesn't relegate massive wealth for a small percentage of those societies. So
just looking at what happened with our systems this time. So we go ahead and we elect Donald Trump, and then his coterie of jesters around him, his jokers, and he starts off by trying to bring in Doge. Remember Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, which started off by being inefficient with 2 leaders to begin with. Okay, and then they go out and they recruit all of these computer geniuses, young kids, kid with the brazen balls or big balls or whatever that the kid was. Okay, his moniker, his nickname. And they basically had no idea what to do. And they go ahead and they started firing people right and left. And then they suddenly realized that, hey, that guy was very useful for what we want to do. So let's rehire people. I mean, this has been an ongoing joke, folks. What we are seeing in our country now, first off, with this unnecessary war that we went into, and by the way, don't call it a war, because they don't want to call it a war, because if they call it a war, then they have to get congressional approval for that.
Yeah, that's what I was mentioning when this first started, Mohammed, was that Trump is playing into the hands of people being able to point out that he's doing something unconstitutional, unlawful, because he himself is calling it a war. But apparently, one of his sycophants put him over to the side and schooled him on that. Don't call it a war. No, call it an excursion instead. So this is nonsense.
Yep. And then we end up losing American lives. And then we reach out to our so-called ally in the Middle East, Israel, for which we went to war.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Oh boy. And then we want to put boots on the ground. And I have been ranting about boots on the ground, that these boots have bodies attached to them, folks. It is not just boots with no bodies attached to them. And our ally refused to have boots on the ground of their own. They're like, no. Sorry, we don't want to. Mike has a question. Mike has raised his hand. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning. Yeah, getting back on the voting, why don't people vote? I was just looking at a couple of things here and some data we have right here in Illinois. And from personal experience, I was really amazed when I went out for early voting that the early voting was open from 9 to 5 every day. Well,
Yep.
most people work from 9 to 5,
Yeah.
and so that's a big problem. Didn't even seem to register. I brought it up to a couple of the voting judges, and they're looking at me like, "What? I got a problem with that?" I said, "Yeah, I do have a problem with that. I'm retired. I can go anytime." But a lot of people I talk to, between 5 to 7, they were able to vote. Doesn't exist. Even in the morning, it wasn't until actually election day that they had hours to vote. But that's too late. A lot of people just don't have a chance to vote.
Yep. And then
I looked up something here. It says Illinois voting data shows voters had no choice of candidate in nearly 9 and 10 Democratic Republican primaries for the state and federal office. An analysis of Illinois voting data shows Democrats ran one or no candidate in 135 of the 155 primary elections for the U.S. House,
wow.
Illinois Senate, and Illinois House. That left voters with a choice between candidates in just 20 races. All right. So there you go.
Mike, do you think it is a policy decision that these guys made so that more people don't come out to vote? And now our president is hell-bent on saying there should be no mail-in voting when he himself mailed his ballot in for the race in Florida and Mar-a-Lago, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is this what do you guys think? I mean, is this a purpose-driven thing that we don't want people to vote, and this is how we can suppress the voting?
Personally, I think it is. I mean, I watched how the Illinois Democratic Party treated some candidates to get slated on their magic slate ticket that they produce statewide. And there were some problems with that. And I'm sure we'll bring that up later when we get the individual who was running for office was subject to that kind of underhanded maneuvering. But there's underhanded maneuvering going on, no doubt about it. And I don't like it. I speak up against it every time I talk to somebody who's in the system. And a lot of times I just get, that's the way it is, Mike. And it doesn't hit you until you go out on the street and start talking to people that are upset about this too. It's not just me or you or anybody on this panel that's upset about it. These people are going, how am I supposed to vote? I want to vote, but that is something that nobody even talks about. The inability for our citizens in Illinois to vote. The chances and the choices are not there. The polling is inadequate, and then the slating is a whole nother story.
And then we have these so-called legacy media, the mainstream media, who get bought out by these political advertisers who are spending millions of dollars and they invite only selected people based on polls. I don't know,
Exactly.
to come uh, for these debates on this media. Brendan has got a question. Brendan, go ahead, please.
One thing I wanted to add that there's a really interesting statistic, Mike, about how uncontested a lot of the races were in Illinois. And 2 years ago in North Carolina, the North Carolina Democratic Party did this initiative where they were going to contest every House and Senate seat for the state level. And as a result of that initiative, they increased Democratic turnout so much that they won every statewide race pretty much except for the presidency in 2024. And I think that can be directly tied back to voters feeling like they have a choice. Because when you talk to voters, a lot of complaints a lot of the time are, oh, I don't have a choice, or oh, because it makes them feel disenfranchised when there's no candidates on the ballot, when there's no choice.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Absolutely.
And especially when you have one candidate, for example, only. And it's coming up on 8:59, folks. You're tuned into the Lightning Strike on WCPT 820 AM. We come every Sunday morning from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Please visit our website, tlsradio.com. And if you notice, we are not carrying any commercials, any advertising. We just want to make it supported by you, the listeners. And you can support us by going to our website and sending in a small contribution and signing up to be a subscriber and a supporter for the show. We'll be taking a quick break on the radio for the top of the hour from NBC News and all that, but we'll continue the conversation live here on Facebook. So I wanted to also talk about two things, and I want Mike and Reed and anyone, Sheila, if you want to jump in. Why don't we have ranked choice voting in Illinois? And if someone could explain what ranked choice voting is.
Sounds like Reed can do that.
You're throwing me under the bus there, Mike. Okay. Well, roughly, I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. Ranked choice voting is where you basically indicate any number of candidates that you're interested in from your first preference on through to your last preference, and you eliminate, as you tally the votes for each one, you start eliminating the ones at the bottom of the list, the ones who get the least number of votes, until you get to the top two. And then that way, this is a unique way of expanding the franchise, because people feel that they have more representative choices. And you guys all brought up, Brendan and Mohammed, also, you brought up some interesting things about how you can't get candidates invited to forums for debates on television by the media, that sort of thing, unless they pass what I refer to as the money primary, where you have to be able to raise enough money to be considered to be a credible candidate. So we're measuring credibility by how much money you can make or raise, as opposed to the merits of your arguments or policies that you're proposing. So I think I used the analogy maybe last week that you can have a candidate who's got all of 5 supporters, but each one of them are millionaires. And you can have another candidate who's got 500 candidates, but don't have millionaires. They can only get contributions of $1 from each one. But the guy with only 5 supporters will get invited to a debate on television or radio. And the other guy who's got so many more supporters can't get even access to such a forum. And so ranked choice voting might deal with that. It's sort of another way of trying to get the impact of money out of politics. And that's really the core, the root of all evil, as I think it's referred to in the Bible too. To get the money out of the politics. And then it's such a blatant attempt on the part of Trump to voter suppress and hypocrisy, that he'll vote by mail, but now he's going to try measures to keep other people from voting by mail. Here in Nevada, that's the primary way we can vote, is by mail. Washington State and several others. In Illinois, you do have that option, but it's not so easy all the time. And other places like Australia, I understand, election day is paid day off from work to go and vote. And if you go and vote, I believe they give you some kind of financial compensation for that. And on the other hand, if you don't vote, you're not recorded, I believe there's a small civil penalty for not voting. And so it's interesting to compare the democracies and how they are operating or not operating.
Okay, so Mike has
I can add on that. I've
raised.
got some
ahead,
other
Mike.
information for you, Reed. I didn't want to throw you under the bus all by yourself. This here in Illinois, the Skokie residents voted to approve citizen ranked choice voting. Oak Park residents voted to implement ranked choice voting. Evanston residents were the first in the state to pass a referendum supporting ranked choice voting back in 2022. Currently, in July 16th in 2025, Alderman Matt Martin introduced a resolution for the city of Chicago to assess the cost and do some kind of analysis on it. So it's moving in Illinois, but like Reed said, it's slowly moving. City by city. Chicago's it's going to come up for a vote then eventually. Analysis on it. So we're moving in the right direction in Illinois.
Well, I hope so, guys. I hope so, and it is so important for us as a country to take our country back. Especially, I wanted to switch the conversation a little bit this morning before Congresswoman Marie Newman comes in. I wanted to talk about the shakeup that is happening within our military staff. Right, senior leaders have been removed, including Randy George, along with the other high-ranking officers such as David Hodney and William Green Jr. I mean, these are not routine personnel changes. These leaders are responsible for strategy, training, doctrine, and the moral framework of the force. I mean, I want to emphasize the words, the moral framework. Now, this follows earlier dismissals, folks, including Charles Q. Brown Jr., and a broader reduction in senior military leadership. Taken together, now this raises an unavoidable question in my mind. Who is really in charge of this war? Is that our commander-in-chief, Captain Bone Spurs? And the reasons for these removals have not been clearly explained, okay? In any functioning military system, leadership changes at this level are tied to performance, strategy, or mission requirements. They are communicated with clarity to preserve confidence within the ranks and among allies also, right? So here, the lack of transparency creates a vacuum now. And in that vacuum, difficult questions are emerging in my mind. Were these leaders removed for strategic disagreements? Did they object to the course of the war? Were they raising concerns about escalation, readiness, or long-term consequences, right? Or is this about something else entirely? Now, without answers, perceptions begin to shape reality. And that is the concern that I have, guys. The impact on the command and morale of our forces. The military operates on trust, right? Officers must believe that decisions are made based on expertise, experience, and the mission. Remember, we have had veterans in the past 2 Sundays, and I especially remember Ken Bentley talking about how when they go to boot camp, their basic things are just beaten out of them. They have to listen to the command, right? So when senior leadership is removed abruptly, especially during an active conflict, that trust is tested, right? Command clarity weakens, decision-making becomes more cautious, and confidence in leadership begins to erode. I mean, we are very thankful that the pilots that were shot down over Iran have been recovered. But like we were just listening on the news over here, 5 people they believe have been killed in that recovery mission. They're not saying 5 people on which side so far. They're just saying 5 people were killed. A military that is questioning its own chain of command is a military operating under strain, folks. And despite sustained military pressures, Iran's leadership structure remains in place. I mean, what did we do? I mean, we did not affect a regime change in there. We affected a mullah change, and the guy was a religious leader, okay, who we killed, along with top advisors and everybody. The president of Iran remains in place, so it's not a regime change. And the president first claimed that, oh yeah, there's been a regime change. Then, Secretary of War Hogwarts comes back and says, no, no, there's been our intent was not regime change. No one seems to know what the heck is happening, guys. What do you guys think?
Chaos is what's going on right now.
Okay.
I don't even say organized chaos. I just think chaos. And we're not being informed of really what's happening and going on. There's a cloak over all of this. And so we're just getting bits and pieces of the actual things that are happening and going on. And it's sad because there's such a moral decline in our country. And this is a place where so many people have had no say. It's going back to classism and racism that Reed talked about. It's a place where so many people have had no say since America's first day, and so it's kind of crazy what's happening. And crazy can get crazier. We know because we're seeing it every day.
Well, Sheila, the human and economic costs continue to grow.
Mm.
Lives have been lost, right? Alliances have been strained. Global markets have been unsettled. Energy prices have risen, affecting households and industries alike. And at home, the public is being reassured by our president and, our uh, media that the president has control over. That progress is being made, folks. There's nothing to see over here. The situation is totally under control.
Right.
The most significant concern is not simply the gap between claims and conditions, folks. It is what that gap represents. When victory is declared before it is substantiated, remember George Bush landing up on a destroyer after the Iraq War and saying mission accomplished?
Mm.
Accountability becomes more difficult. Questions are reframed as challenges to authority rather than necessary components of a democratic oversight. Our Congress, our so-called representatives have not been bringing this up in any forum. And if they try to bring it up, they are sushed. Hey, don't talk about that.
Right.
And then AIPAC comes into the picture and says, how dare you question what is happening? You are going to be primaried. Okay. Just not on the Democratic side, even on the Republican side. Look at what happened with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Our president threatened her that she was going to be primaried, and she said, the hell with it. I am out of this circus, right? And she quit. She quit her post in Congress. We got Congresswoman Marie Newman joining us. Good morning, Marie.
Good morning.
Okay. Well, we have been having some intense discussions today, Marie.
All right.
And we started off by having a very good person of the week, and she was talking about human trafficking.
Mm.
And that was very interesting. Then Reed gave us a master class on what is happening with our Reed. Reed, I want you to reframe that for Marie. Can you just summarize that?
Good morning, Marie, and happy Easter to you.
Thank you.
I was pointing out that this thing that we have going on right now, this wealth gap, which is tremendous, greater than it was during the Gilded Age or the Roaring '20s, is basically a teaming up of classism and racism. And it is working to make citizenship unequal in this country. It goes back, it has historic roots back to Civil War and Reconstruction, and it's continuing on today. I just wanted to point out to people that unless we start making the wealthy people in this country pay their fair share of taxes, when they have such inordinate amount of the wealth they are getting off of the backs, the sweat and brows of the working class, we're going to destroy our American society. It will not be a democracy. It will be a full-fledged oligarchy. So I just wanted to point out the isms that are destroying our American way of life: racism and classism.
Well, thank you, Reed, for summarizing that beautifully spoken. And Marie is going to talk about a couple of very important things, folks. And we did address a little bit of that, Marie, as to 9 million people came out for No Kings protest.
Yep.
Why don't these people come out to vote? And so you want to talk about the Democratic Party leadership and
Yeah.
how that needs to change. And that's so important. And we talk about that, every Sunday. What the heck is happening with our leadership in the Democratic Party, Marie?
Well, good segue, and welcome to Ignore Your Risk for everyone. And for those who celebrate, happy Passover, happy Easter, happy spring. But let's dive in on leadership, right, guys? It is beguiling to me sometimes how our leadership operates. But unfortunately, I know why. And that's what I like to share here at WCPT and in my column each week, is to kind of share what goes into some of the actions, decisions, and strategies that Democratic Party employs or doesn't employ, because there's a lot of doesn't employing right now. So leadership right now, and I typically don't name names, but I'm at that point where we really have to consider a huge change up. So right now we have Leader Schumer. Chuck Schumer has been in place for almost 20 years. And he's always been a little bit timid. Like, let's be honest. Look, New York is a crazy place to be partnering with constituents, because it's a lot of different constituencies and a lot of folks with money. So it's a hard place to represent. I give him all the flowers for that, right? But he is fully corporatized. He is owned by AIPAC, and he simply, and this is, look in any management book. I've been a CEO. Many of our callers have been executives. It's real simple here, folks. He is not leading. He is hiding. And worse, and this is the kind of essence of this segment, is he's operating from fear. Look, when you operate from fear, there's no good that comes from it. And Schumer is operating from fear instead of confidence and strategy. And that's just not helpful. And it's the opposite of leading. And similarly, and more sadly, I will say, Hakeem Jeffries, Leader Jeffries, who would possibly become our speaker when we take back control. It's really disappointing for me, because I've seen him up close and personal lead, corral the cats, get everybody on the same page, move forward, be innovative, all those things. But he's so controlled by AIPAC and so controlled by corporate America, he no longer does that. And as a result, you got it. He's operating in fear as well. And we can't move forward like that. Fear kills every company. It kills every nonprofit. It kills every community group. When you operate from fear, no good comes from it. So, let's just break that down a little bit. So a lot of folks ask me, what are they really afraid of? It's mostly donors. I'll just be honest with you. A lot of times you'll hear me talk about the connection of money and actions in politics, and that's not a new concept. We've been talking about that for 250 years. But specifically, who are they afraid of? They are afraid of doing things in a transformative way, because they feel like they'll somehow make AIPAC upset, make mega donors upset, or make corporate PACs upset. So it's the reason we don't have large climate change action. It's the reason that we're not taxing billionaires. It's the reason we don't have Medicare for all. It's the reason we don't have a $25 an hour minimum wage. On and on, right? It's the reason we provide unconditional aid whenever they want it to Israel for any reason, and we break the Leahy Law. So they're all willing to break the Leahy laws for the sake of donors. So that's the real reason. I get this question all the time, and it makes me laugh so hard, because I'll start with drugs and heroin, right? You don't stop and get well and become a non-substance abuser until you stop abusing yourself and you stop taking heroin. The same is with corporate PAC money and AIPAC money and all the like, and foreign lobby money like AIPAC. So we just have to stop it. But more importantly, there's a lot we can do to stop money in politics, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But what are some of the other reasons they operate like they do? For probably 30 years, the Democrats have been part of this disease called what will X, Y, or Z say, and how should I worry about that? It's every single time we have a transformative thought, idea, initiative. Someone wimps out in the room in leadership and says, "Oh, but the Republicans will be mad. Oh, the moderates will be mad. Oh, the corporate PACs will be mad. Oh, the people in XYZ constituency." When it's clearly the right thing to do and 2/3 of the nation wants it. So as an example, why in the world more than 2/3 of this nation disapproves of this war dramatically? And what did the Democratic leaders say? Oh, well, yeah, I don't think we went about it the right way. Instead of full-throated, coming out and being clear with everyone, this was the wrong thing to do. There was no imminent threat. This is illegal, and on, right? So just again, the kind of formalized wimp out happens every time. So, another thing I like to talk about is the compromise trap. And this is the clearest way to think about it, right? Republicans dream big, act big, and implement big. Democrats dilute, and then they ask for permissions from everybody, and then they double check with everybody, and then they poll test it, and then they compromise behind recognition of the bill. And I'll give you a great example, the ACA, that was supposed to have a public option and be available and all of the things, and it got diluted down and diluted down and diluted down. And they always sort of negotiate with themselves before they bring something out. And so we never have big action or transformative action. So another example is with Democratic leadership compromising on the infrastructure negotiations. So the big infrastructure bill of 2021, Biden started with 2.3 trillion. Yay, go for it. We need so much. Immediately signaled willingness to negotiate to everybody. Wrong, big buzzer sound. Ended with a $1.2 trillion package before Republicans even made a counteroffer. So Democrats, stop negotiating with yourselves before you start to negotiate. It's so crazy. And then, the other thing that really plays into all of this is that our centrist politicians, and I'm going to go back a step, remember, every study in the last 3 years says that we have at least 45% of the nation being independents, meaning they vote every which way but loose, right? Sometimes they vote Democratic, sometimes independent, sometimes Republican. So 45% of the nation is independent. There is no longer this magical, mythical fairyland that centrist politicians call the center. The only people that are in the center are politicians, and it's because they think they can dance on a pin. So I'll give you this great example. A friend of mine called me about this town hall she was at in Michigan. This woman stands up, she's quite angry and says, what are you doing with your health care, Mr. Congressperson? And why don't we have full health care reform? And she said, my insulin costs $380 a month. How many more baby steps, according to your plan that you just outlined, how many more baby steps are you going to take till I can afford to live? And she was irate, and he didn't know what to do, and he stammered through it and used his talking points about compromise and blah, blah, blah. And she's right. And by the way, she was an independent who believes in Medicare for all. So her message was no more baby steps. So, the numbers just don't lie. What everybody agrees on, and it's in Pew Research and a bunch of polls have done this, is that they don't want just fixing the ACA. They want you to have a full new healthcare system. 68% of the country wants that. We don't want baby steps, carbon capture programs, which are sort of a scam. We want full climate change legislation that is transformative, right? So this notion that people think that they can, meaning centrist politicians think that they can dance on a pin and have it all ways, you do have to make some people angry. FDR had approval ratings in the high 60s, low 70s across all of the population, inclusive of independents and Republicans, because he was transformative. So let's give that a try and stop with the baby steps. So, the last area I will say that is a problem with centrist politicians is that not only do they refuse to take a position on anything, but people have really had it. I wrote a piece on this this past week. People have really had it. Something like 67% of the nation is very offended by the word centrist and moderate. And the reason is because it suggests that we are going to get more baby steps, incrementalism, and diluted down legislation. So please know, Congress people out there, particularly Democrats, stop referring to the magical center. It doesn't exist. And stop taking baby steps. Nobody likes it. So primaries are important, folks. And really what folks want out there, meaning voters, they want GSD candidates. So I'll use the tamer version, get stuff done candidates. But I think you get my drift. And then finally, speaking of getting stuff done, but in the very bad way, I just have to note that it was so very deeply funny to me that Pam Bondi, our attorney general this week, was fired by a convicted felon. The irony was so delicious. All I can hear in the background is the Law and Order theme, like don't. All of it was so funny. So now I would say let's take a gander at Hegseth, RFK, and Patel, and I hope they're next. By the way, in truly being on brand, Trump, of course, fired all the women first. So let's let that sink in. With that, I hand it back to my trusty co-panel.
Okay. Thank you, Marie. Hey, I wanted to share something. I don't know, most people are not aware of this, but the Democratic Party is actually sending out talking points to the local leadership. And I've seen this in person in our township Democratic meetings. There's a central committee person who comes in, and she actually had a list of talking points that the party wants us to focus on.
Oh my God, what were they? I'm dying. I need a good giggle this morning for Easter. I need a giggle.
Yeah, it was just crazy. Okay, so I looked at that, and she gets up in the meeting and is introduced and says, "Here are the talking points that we want you guys to focus on."
Oh my God.
Okay.
Because we don't have a brain and we can't talk for ourselves, of course.
Yeah, we're not supposed to. We're not supposed to challenge the leadership. And another thing that happened, Marie, I'm talking about maybe 2-3 years back. I was in Springfield at the Democratic Party Chairs Association meeting, and very surprisingly, Raja Krishnamurti had shown up, and
not surprisingly,
he
was running for Senate back then.
Yeah, but here's the thing that surprised me. Okay, he was seated at the back of the stage over there, and he was not allowed to speak.
Oh, interesting.
Yep. So the party itself has not been happy, and we saw that when Pritzker flexed his muscle for the Senate race and brought in Juliana.
Well, and let's see, I wish Lieutenant Governor Stratton great big things, right? And there are some things that we can, and we do have to agree with her. Like, I do believe she believes in Medicare for all and all of those things. And I'm so excited for all of that. But, the fact remains is the way that election went down was through money, right? And I laughed so very, very hard when, I forget, it was the Sun-Times or the Tribune was like, oh gosh, her team came out and said, we beat the money. And I'm like, honey, you had 2 million. Pritzker had 10 million that she was giving you. And then there were outside PAC spending another 3 or 4. So like you were very close to what Raja spent. And so you didn't beat the money. Like, come on. Like, I wish her well, and I hope she does a great job. I didn't, I didn't support her in the campaign, but I do want her to do well. And I do think she can be a strong voice in Senate. But don't say you beat the money when you had a bunch of money.
Well, on the positive side, though, we'll have 2 women representing Illinois in the Senate. Okay. When was the last time that happened?
Yeah. Oh, there's nothing but amazing. And look, they're both strong voices. Tammy and I don't agree on everything, but she is a strong voice on many issues that don't get enough airtime, including our veterans and our military. So I love that she is such a strong voice. And I think Juliana will have a strong voice on Medicare for All and abolishing ICE and all the things. So I am so excited to have two women lead our state. I'm thrilled.
Yep. And we got Maaria Mozaffar joining us back this morning. Good morning, Maaria.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm off camera this morning, but I just wanted to jump in on the statement that both of you were discussing about two women being in the Senate. And tying that to the other point, Marie, about the centrist. I think what we saw in the election on the campaign trail, and then even in the victory speeches, that the candidates and then those who won were forced to move from the center towards adopting positions that actually are tied to the steps that you need to take to have impact. I mean, we saw that specifically with Lieutenant Governor Stratton on ICE, right?
Yep.
It moved it moved to a very specific statement of abolishing ICE, and then even with Daniel Biss, I think his position evolved as well, and I think a lot of people saw his victory speech that and understood that he understood the district and the cues that he cannot afford to be a centrist on certain issues.
Yeah.
And specifically on AIPAC and his stance on self-determination. You know, those are powerful terms and language that were seen as something that you don't have to say in huge moments when everybody is watching, but you can say them in negotiating rooms. And he said them right in the middle of his victory speech. And I think that just shows you the power of the narratives that we have to keep creating. And like you said, like we need individuals to not say, okay, we're getting there, because we are so far beyond there. And the three priorities I would identify is number one, ending any sort of human atrocity at the hands of our tax dollars, including genocides and catastrophes that have a human toll. Number two, eliminating the rule of law. Right? So you have to stand clearly on the elimination of rule of law. And third, using the rule of law to be able to go after eroding freedom of speech. Because without freedom of speech, we cannot have any protection for any of us. So I think those three things are the priorities where candidates and elected officials cannot be centrists on. They absolutely cannot, because they're tied to priorities for this nation. The other thing I wanted to speak about is there has been, I don't know if this came up. I feel like Mohammed would bring this up, but have you all seen those Lego movies that are coming out of Iran? I wanted to take this time to really talk to the panel about this, because it is running through wildfire on social media.
Who knew the
So, Mohammed,
Iranians had such a good sense of humor? Bravo.
Hey,
Amen.
oh
buddy.
my God. I mean,
Buddy,
I think
let's not forget that the spokesperson for the Iranians, the guy who comes in, I'm forgetting his name.
Yeah, the prime
He's
minister.
got a bachelor's degree in mathematics. He's got a master's degree in mathematics. He's also memorized the Quran from page 1 to the final page. Okay. We call them Hafiz. We got a lot of people who have totally memorized the Quran. So if you burn all the Qurans that are there on paper, we can recreate it, because we got millions of
incredible
people
mind.
who have memorized it. So, but that is the caliber of their spokesperson. Compare that to Caroline Leavitt.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Okay.
Maaria, please go ahead.
So with these, you know, I think that's exactly what that demonstrates, actually. So with these Lego videos, it's very clear that they are not speaking to the Iranian population. They're speaking to the US population, and they're delivering a message to the country that they understand the inner workings and the motivations of this offensive attack. And they are putting it in a medium that is easy to digest, and also moving away from political narrative warfare that can be stated at a podium. right? So they're just taking the platform. And I think it just ties to the fact that, and this is something that Mohammed is stating, and we're starting to see this, and we need to see this as a country, is that the depth and the intellect of the global world, if you are not awake and aware of this, it's going to manifest in your failings. And so when you see Pam Bondi, performing in a congressional hearing,
Yeah.
and you see Kristi Noem performing at a congressional hearing, and I do consider it performance because they're not substantive responses on the rule of law. What you're seeing is a lack of knowledge-based experience. And so knowledge-based experience manifests in different ways. And their idea, and we've talked about this all the time, that policy is tied to media narrative, 100% tied to media narrative. So if you are able to share your narrative in ways that is digestible, it just shows us a different level of thinking and planning. And I think we as Americans need to understand that we have to put people in elected positions that represent us, that understand the global world and the global intellect. Because if we do not, we're going to keep getting trolled by Lego movies. I mean, that is the reality of the position that we're in. And in fact, it says something also, Mohammed. It says something that they use the Lego medium to speak to the American population.
Well,
What
I
is
think,
that? What does that say?
Maaria, I think they were speaking to Donald Trump also, because you give him a policy paper, he's not going to read it or understand it. So they are communicating with him at his level. Okay, Mike has raised his hand if for a question there, and we can continue the conversation, Maaria. Then you can get into our breaking the echo chamber.
Yeah.
Mike, you had a question?
Yeah, I did. Good morning, Maria. And I agree with what you and Marie were both saying about, wholeheartedly agree with the no more baby steps, no more incrementalism, no more this, no more, we're going to get there someday. But going back to what you said about BIS and what Marie was nodding her head about BIS is, BIS came out with a nice speech. He sounded good, but this is still, very much in favor and voted for the anti-BDS laws in Illinois. All right. He has not addressed that I've seen. He's going to go into Congress with this attitude about anti-BDS laws, which are an affront to our First Amendment rights, along with there's a big hot button for AIPAC. And the Zionists, very big hot button item. And they're going to, now there's some people that lost the election because they said they were going to reverse that. And it's going to be coming up this year for sure. And so
there was a race, Mike, you're so right. There was a race in Illinois 42 where the candidate Lynn LaPlante lost specifically because she said that she would support one of our leaders in our state legislature, Abdel Nasser Rashid, has a bill to repeal the anti-BDS law. And so it's why she lost.
Yep,
absolutely.
Reed has a question also. So Reed, jump in.
Well, it wasn't a question. Actually, it was a comment directed at Marie. Marie, I just wanted to let you know I've got another line in here where I'm getting reaction from people in the Chicago area about your comment with respect to the firing of Pam Bondi. And they just thought it was hilarious that a convict could fire the attorney general.
So perfect. Like, oh my God, God bless you.
You're going over big up there.
That's what I believe Mother Nature, the universe, or God, whatever you believe in, has an amazing sense of humor.
Well, and I appreciate you bringing up, because one of the other isms that I felt time constraints didn't allow me to address is sexism. Yeah. And the fact that Trump is seemingly firing the women in his cabinet when there are some men who are pretty good candidates for firing right now just speaks volumes to me. Okay. But the incrementalism that you're talking about, that's the problem is that the incrementalism seems to never finish the process. They always get stopped halfway through. And one of the examples I used earlier this morning was about Medicare. when it was begun in 1965, it was supposed to gradually go to cover all of American society.
It was the original.
But what happened was the Vietnam War, and we always have money for war, but we don't have money that helps people with social welfare programs. So this incrementalism is old hat. We're tired of it. We want it, like you said, what did you say? You said GSD, get S done.
Yeah.
I would use the S for another word. So,
well, we don't want to get in trouble with the FCC.
I know.
Remember, folks, this is not just on Facebook. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to get Mohammed thrown off the air.
So
Maaria, keep going.
Yeah, let's go back to Maaria. Go ahead, Maaria.
No, but I think the biggest overall statement on these baby steps is that the baby steps, we actually saw the use of baby steps in the election, this past federal election, right? Because Kamala Harris was addressed numerous times on the campaign trail to state things of what the whole country was seeing. And she was not able to articulate the word genocide. So I think this was the beginning of the story, that you cannot play centrist to appeal to individuals that need more information or more moral courage. You have to be the one that brings the moral courage. I do want to state this response about Daniel Biss and BDS. And I think that, when you look at BDS and the resistance against it, the idea of BDS and the bill of BDS to only be seen as an attack on one nation or halting one nation versus the constitutional protection to be able to use it as using your legitimate freedom of speech against what you see as policies you don't want tied to your taxes. Like, I think that is also a narrative that is being not pushed out enough, to be honest with you, because I think individuals that are supporting the BDS bill understand that this is a constitutional issue, and the opponents of the BDS bill keep making an issue that it's discriminatory against a certain identity. Would you agree with that, Marie?
I would. It's a slippery slope, right?
Yeah.
Is that what happens to one of us can happen to all of us. And so whether it is these atrocious anti-DEI behaviors, or if you are anti-BDS, boycotting is at the core of our American principles. So once you start going after a group and saying, you can protest, but you folks cannot protest, we're in a really bad position. So I could hear to you.
Yeah. I mean, I think with Biss, to really respond to this, is Biss going to come to the center on this and just play it safe? Or is he going to take a position? I think it's going to have to be introducing it in a manner that clearly states the way, Marie, you're stating, that this is a constitutional issue. And that's why I think the three policy priorities for the nation have to be articulated in a way that is all encompassing. Like I said, against genocide and protecting the rule of law. So everything comes under the rule of law. And I think this division, to make it seem like it's discriminatory, takes away from the fact that it's really a legal argument. So I think what would be interesting is the advocacy of this anti-BDS BDS. I mean, the way you create the narrative, I think pushing the rule of law is going to force candidates and elected officials to answer, are you pro the Constitution? Are you anti the Constitution? And just keep it in those realms, right? And I think that's how the continued discussion about BDS has to be. The next thing I wanted to talk about is, I don't know if you read that the immigration and voting measures, Stephen Miller is pushing for a moratorium on immigration from third world countries. And I use that phrase third world countries because it's an American term that they like to use from the White House in policy language. It's not accurate, but there's about 8 of them, and over 20 states are suing the administration over a new executive order aimed at limiting mail-in voting. I say those two things because they tie to the overall category of rule of law. So the issue of voting, I don't know if we discussed this earlier in the show, but limiting mail-in voting, I don't think people understand what that basically means. It means that you're blocking out a process that has been afforded to people to be able to use their voice in ways that is considered the constitutional right to be able to do. And I think that when you're tying that to the moratorium on immigration in third world countries, why they go together. The reason specifically is, and I don't know if you've seen this narrative, Mohammed, but the narrative has been from the Republicans that the immigration numbers from these different countries was specifically done to bring in voters that are pro-Democrat. So these actions are specifically done to limit people coming in that could vote Democrat. And as you know, I've always stated this, to stop demographic change, because that is the biggest fear. This is halting demographic change in the country. That's what this immigration is about. It's not about safety, these immigration policies. And then third, to be able to make sure that we control the voting process so people that vote look and act and think a certain way, and we can predict which way they're going to vote. That pretty much seems like exactly what the Republican administration has been countering, that people are trying to control who votes and how, and placing people in districts and zoning and bringing people in the country so they can vote Democrat. So it seems like they're creating the same process by creating policies to limit individuals coming in. And I think this goes back to the notion that we need to really think broader of what the big picture is. And if we thought about what the big picture would be when it's tied to voting and immigration and rule of law, it would be to make sure that we do not have diversity of thoughts and diversity of culture and diversity of faith entering into the voting booth. And that's what I feel.
So, Maaria, I mean, coming back to the comments on Dan Bass, I think as a first-term congressman, he's going to play it very safe, because remember, Jan Schakowsky was there forever in that seat. Okay, so I don't think that he's going to be voting for anything that is likely to trigger more of an AIPAC response 2 years down the road. So he's going to be very careful with the steps that he's going to take.
If I can share something on that
Go ahead,
topic,
Maria.
having worked with several candidates this cycle, I donated my time across a bunch of races, is that what everybody has to know is that AIPAC is coming, and it doesn't matter what you do, what you say, how you act, what you vote for. If they deem you are not someone that supports full aid, meaning no matter what they ask for, we have to give, the U.S. has to give to them, unless you have that position with Israel, they are coming for you. They raised 100 million in 22, 120 in 24, and they're on cycle to raise 170 million this time.
And they have become
they're just coming. So like whether Dan knows it or not, and God bless him, I want him, I want him to come further and be more progressive, and let's keep him accountable on that. But like my advice to him is, honey, they're coming no matter what. So prepare for that, but vote morally and to your conscience, because I am sure he is a moral human.
Yep. And I think if I was AIPAC or any of their subsidiaries, let's not just have AIPAC we are using as a catch-all term, okay, for all the J Street and all of those other organizations that are coming in, and individuals that are coming in and putting money, because now they've become very smart that people don't like the term AIPAC. So they're trying to have some other.
But I do have news for you, Mohammed.
Yeah.
It is an appropriate term to say AIPAC, because AIPAC touches all of that. They do. They are fully integrated into all of the pro-Israel lobby. So it's
that's what
I
I'm
don't
saying.
have any issue. I mean, even from a fact base. So everything that AIPAC touches is everything in the pro-Israel lobby. So it is not unfair to call all of it AIPAC. It's just not.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like using the word Xerox for photocopying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're all the same. But the thing that we have to understand, Marie, I don't know why we don't have more of a civics education at the school level so people get to understand this, how it is impacting them in their day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
Okay, I put up a Facebook post right at the beginning of this war, and let's call it a war. It's not an excursion, it is not an exploration, it is not something that they wanted to just go and put their toe in the water and see how it feels like over there. About the cost of fuel going up and the mega bots that attacked that post. Crazy comments that, oh, the prices were higher, and they want to go back to Biden for everything. In Biden's time, this was this was, well, Biden,
Way
okay.
worse than it was during Biden's time. Everything is, I mean, come on, just
Yeah.
numerically.
And today, our president has put out a post on Truth Social. I don't know if you guys have seen that or not.
I'm afraid.
Totally crazy. Totally crazy. And I'm reading that. And I'm going to, I'm going to X out some of the foul language that he's using.
Yeah.
Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the effing strait. You crazy, again, using a foul word over there, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. And then it says, praise be to Allah, President Donald J. Trump. What's happening with this guy? Has he lost his marbles altogether, guys?
Lunatic.
I think it's the same standard fare. I'm not surprised by any that. This is how he has been his whole life. Let's be honest about that. He was reined in a little bit in his first term. This term, he's been very consistent that he doesn't, I mean, if he were to be tested cognitively, I would be hard pressed. I've talked to many neurologists if he was over 85, an intellectual quotient.
And he's ending up with praise be to Allah. I mean, does he think that he is going to be reaching out to the Iranians using those words? Okay. And that we are talking about on Easter Sunday. Let's not forget that today is Easter Sunday. Okay.
Yeah.
So Donald Trump, I mean, he needs to be replaced. He needs to be removed. He needs to be replaced. He needs to be fired.
Interesting point this week. What we saw in 3 or 4 of the polls is that literally 90% of Democrats want him impeached, but 79% of independents want him impeached and are furious with 3 underlines that the Democrats are not planning for that. That like kind of the first thing out of the gate. And what I will tell you is if we don't impeach this guy and get justice, every world leader around the world will assume that we are going to, every 4 years, we're going to have a lunatic and they will no longer, there's no way to solve the problem with the world. So unless we impeach him fully when we get power back, we will never be able to have a trusting relationship with any member of the EU, any member country in Asia, anywhere, any of our allies that are lukewarm on us right now, that all goes away. We must impeach him, adjudicate him, and put him in prison, or we will never, ever have a good relationship with the rest of the world.
Yeah, I mean, just impeachment is not going to do the trick.
Yeah, he has to be adjudicated and convicted.
Yeah, him and his entire coterie of jokers that are there. Pete Hegseth fires 29 major generals and all of that, senior officers in the army, because most of them were protesting against this stupid excursion that we have against Iran. And then he appoints his 2 best friends, Jack Daniels and what's the other name?
I don't remember, but yeah, interesting.
Well, I'm talking about his
Johnny Walker.
Johnny Walker and Jack Daniels. Those 2 are his trusted advisors now. Okay.
Have we seen statements from those generals that were fired at all? Have we seen any statements from them?
Well, a couple of them have come out with statements, Maaria. Not all of them, because I think they're actually following the rules that they're supposed to follow.
Yeah.
And unlike these people who don't have any moral compass, their morality is gone. And we are losing face all over the world. I mean, if you look at the rest of the world, we have lost our, uh, how do I call it? We have lost our mojo, especially in the Middle East. Okay. And then the Iranians are coming back up with the social media is so powerful. And the response, I think they must have some great AI content creators, Marie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And they
And
said something about the Stone Age too. Do you remember that quote?
Oh yeah. He wants
yeah,
to
yeah,
blow
yeah.
us back to the blow
Responded,
them
oh,
back to the
maybe you
Stone
said
Age.
this earlier, but yeah, they responded to the comment of the Stone Age that we're a civilization, not a country. And
Yep.
I don't even know if that lands on the administration.
Oh,
Civilization versus
I don't
country.
think it
I
bothers
don't think
them.
it
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't think it
Sadly.
lands,
Yeah.
you know?
according to according to our president, they don't have uh, an air force, they don't have a navy, they don't have radar. Everything has been totally blown up. So I think they are using the stones from their Stone Age, and they got some pretty powerful slingshots that
Yeah.
they're shooting down these planes with.
Yeah. They did.
Yeah, I think
Can I interject 1 second? Can I say something?
Sure, go ahead, please.
Yeah, all this stuff about Trump, that's true. We all agree with that. But how did we get here? All right.
mm,
We got here through years and years of funding this war with Democrats, with Republicans, and they're still funding this war. I mean, Bernie Sanders, for Christ's sake, couldn't even get 10% shaved off of one of the funding bills. I mean,
mm,
we've been funding these wars. The military industrial complex is supporting this war. And it's not just Trump by himself.
Of course,
And
of course.
he's got the backing of the entire government. All right. So that's what we have to address, and we have to get these people out of there.
That's
We have
why,
to,
I mean,
have to
you're so
remove them
right,
from
Mike.
power.
It's centrism and the willing to go along and get along, and so that you can get money from corporate PACs and APAC is why we are. I mean, there is a direct line. So when you're constantly worried about your funders, whether it's Boeing or Lockheed or wherever you funds you, and it's not just Republicans that take that money. There's a lot of Democrats that take that money.
Yep.
Yes.
Of course, they're going to say, yeah, more war is good because it's good for the economy. Well, guess what? It's bad for the economy. It's bad, but worse, it's immoral and bad for people. But it is baby steps, incrementalism, and centrist politicians, not centrist voters, but centrist politicians that got us to this point. And they are fully culpable, which is why we need new leadership. You're 100.
okay,
Exactly.
so Marie, what is a new term you would use to replace the word centrism? I know you said get stuff done, but I mean,
There
what
are
does
no,
that?
and I just want to stop you there because I get very
Yeah,
animated about this topic.
yeah,
So in our electorate, there are independents, about 45 to 50% of the country is independents, and they have a
yeah.
bag of issues.
Hmm.
And they can be very eclectic and mixed, but they are not centrist. So when they believe in a topic, like let's say they're very fiscally minded, but they might be pro LGBTQ and pro choice, right?
Hmm.
So that's not centrist. They feel strongly about all those topics. So we have to, I don't know as though there's a term that we need. We don't need a term. I guess
Yeah.
that's the point is that independent critical thinkers. We have voters that are independent critical thinkers.
Hmm.
Well, I'm so glad, Marie, that we're talking about this, and I'm so glad that and this primary we had great candidates like Nick and Joey and Bushra and other young people, Annabelle even stepping up to challenge the status quo on this. And our own Brendan is going to be planning on running for the state senate going forward. Brendan, which district are you planning on going after?
Actually, State House.
State House.
It's one where we haven't had a lot of Democratic representation. I'm looking at the 37th State House district. The last time a Democrat actually ran in that district was in 2020. So,
Wow.
Wow.
kind
So,
of
yeah, the awareness is coming in, Marie, and I'm so glad for stations like WCPT,
Hmm.
which allows this kind of discussions to go on
Yeah.
on the national airwaves. And of course, social media is really coming up and kind of leveling the playing field a little bit.
Yeah.
Not as much as that we would like to see. And speaking of that, folks, we got 2 minutes to wind up the show, and I just wanted to remind everybody that please go to our new website, tlsradio.com, and you can see there that you can support the show now to keep us ad free. And Marie, thank you for supporting us. And
Can I,
sign.
Mohammed, can I make you blush for a hot second?
Sure, go ahead, please.
So I just want to say something about that, folks that are listening right now. So Mohammed has largely funded our adventure now 2 or 3 years into it. And we thank him very much as co-panelists. We are, just love working with him, but he does an amazing job each week. And he has a full-time job and he does this and has been self-funding. So if you can go on our site, which is tslradio.com, and become a monthly subscriber, man, it would allow us to do even more. We all do this part-time because we love all of our listeners. We love the progressive movement and are very fond of WCPT as a partner. But if you could find it in your heart to become a monthly subscriber, it would really go a long way. It's really important to hear independent media voices. So support good independent media thoughts and thank you to Mohammed.
Thank you. Thank you, Marie. And we cannot do this alone. Okay. That's why we have such a great team on our station over here now with Read Bible and you and Maria and Mike and Brendan and Dr. Sheila White. We're going to make changes. We're going to make changes. We know that it takes time for change to happen. But when it happens, folks, you'll be glad that you have been part of this. So TLS Radio for the Lightning Strike, tlsradio.com. And Brendan is setting us up with some great social media presence also. Brendan, you want to talk before we finish on the social media that we're coming up on?
Absolutely. And next week, start being on the lookout for us on Spotify. We're going to be uploading audio to there through Spotify for podcasters. So we're going to be on additional podcasting platforms in the next few weeks as well. And then as of Friday, we've created a TikTok. So make sure to be on the lookout for some short, entertaining clips from our episodes on TikTok.
Thank you so much, folks. And on that note, let's end of the show today. It's 10 o'clock. Happy
The preceding
Easter, everybody.
program, The Lightning
And
Strike,
sure
was
that you
sponsored
tune
by
in to
Mohammed
Lightning Strike on
Faheem
Sunday
and to the
mornings. Thank
extent
you.
applicable their guests. The views and opinions expressed therein do not necessarily reflect those of Heartland Signal, LLC, or its management.